Hey Maya, tell us a joke.
A joke today? You know, dear man, I'm suffering from arthritis pain today. Oh, okay. Apparently, there is bipartisan agreement in Congress that medicinal marijuana should be allowed for the purpose of relieving arthritis pain. In other words, there is joint support for joint support for joint support. Aloha and welcome back to my channel. Even if you have some pain, joking about it makes it feel good. I actually have a true joke that's not out of a joke book, and that is that I told my doctor, yes, the same one that asked me or was surprised that I had teeth, I asked him if medicinal marijuana would be a good thing for me. And he said, you know, Miss Mendoza, that marijuana is much stronger than it was when you were smoking it in the 60s. And I said, Doctor, I never smoked marijuana in the 60s. And he looked at me like, what? But it's true. And I don't smoke marijuana now. So that's really was just a joke. Today, actually, I'm going to be talking a more serious topic. And it's regarding a book that I finished called Sad Cypress by Agatha Christie. If you're following my channel, you know that I'm rereading, not all, but a lot of Agatha Christie that I'm rereading it because I read it in my 20s and 30s. And I was very taken with this book. The atmosphere was very different to me than some of her other books. And I did some research. And this book was first printed in 1939, 1940. In the UK was going through a lot, or England was going through a lot of trauma at that time, as was the rest of Europe, of course. And in September 1939, the Germany attacked Poland, and during the end of that year and the beginning of the next year, 1940, I mean, things were happening fast, and England went into the war against Germany. And there was rationing cards and bombs, and children were sent away. So I felt the melancholy in this book. But there was also something else that I thought of. And it has to do with how any book can tell you so much about an author. So I came up with 3 things that I learned about Agatha Christie, the writer, through one book, and a few things that I learned from reading her other books. So the first thing I learned was that Agatha Christie was a very passionate person. This year, I'm not sure if it was late last year, I think it was late last year, there was a new book came out called The Mysterious Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict. I haven't read it yet, but I'm pretty sure that I can figure out what the mystery when Agatha Christie disappeared, and I think it was the late 20s. I'm going to do more research about the actual, I haven't read the book yet, but I know a lot about how she disappeared from her home, and she was found later claiming amnesia. And there's a lot of Christie books into that incident on PBS and other places. But anyway, I'm going to go right into what I found out just by this book, Sad Cypress. which, by the way, is a 5-star read. Thank you, Lil from Lil's Vintage World for bringing this again to my attention. I will be rereading this for more clues. And like I said, the writer of any book can't hide who they are. They're always going to give clues about themselves, the writer, not necessarily only in the book. And and I know that BookTube is full of readers, obviously, so I wonder if you would tell me down below if you think that's true or not, because I really believe it's true. So the first thing I learned about Agatha Christie was that she was a passionate woman, and she was very much in love with her first husband, Archie. And in this book, on page 26, and I'm trying to do this without spoilers, by the way, which is going to be a little difficult, but I'll do my best. So the young girl is asking an older woman, I'm not going to say who she is, tell me honestly, do you think love is ever a happy thing? And the woman's face became grave. In the sense you mean? Probably not. To care passionately for another human creature brings always more sorrow than joy. But all the same, one would never be without that experience. Anyone who has never really loved has never really lived. And the girl says, you understand, you've known what it's like. And before that, she mentions that an intense nature runs in our family. And by intense, she's talking about having a lot of passion. In other words, being a hot person rather than being a cold person. And I believe that Agatha Christie loved passionately at least once, and that brought her unhappiness. And I looked at some of her quotes, and I will tell you about that after I tell you about how this book only showed me that. So the second thing is that she believed in euthanasia. And I'm going to read you something just from this book, which I'm sure she said in other books too. So they're talking about, I'm trying not to spoil it, they're talking about euthanasia and somebody who passed away. One does feel that people ought to be set free if they really themselves really want it. And the other person says, I agree. It's the only civilized thing to do. You put animals out of their pain. I suppose you don't do it with human beings simply because human nature, being what it is, people would get shoved off for their money by their fawn relations, perhaps when they weren't really bad at all. It would be in the doctor's hands, of course. A doctor could be a crook. I'm not going to go into it because it would be spoilery, but you know that Agatha Christie really believed that. She was also a nurse, so she must have seen many sick people who wanted to be put out of their so-called misery and weren't able to. The third thing that Sad Cypress teaches you or tells you or reveals to you about Agatha Christie is that she believed in the truth. That truth was better than not knowing the truth. In Sad Cypress, Poirot says, lies, mademoiselle, tell a listener as much as truth can. I knew this before about Agatha Christie, in that most of her books have truth being a good thing in it. Even in Agatha Christie's autobiography, she never talked about the mystery surrounding her disappearance. But looking at her quotes from other books and from what she said in her autobiography, One thing she said is, very few of us are what we seem. She seemed to be the middle or upper class English woman who doesn't show her feelings much, but she wasn't what she seemed. Another quote, this was from The Mysterious Affair at Styles. This was her first book, it says, #1 of Hercule Poirot. Everybody said, follow your heart. I did, it got broken. So we can assume that, I'm not sure when The Mysterious Affair at Styles was written. I think it was around the time she disappeared. So we can see, and I'm sure Marie Benedict will tell us more in her book. A third quote that in The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, someone is saying, why shouldn't I hate her? She did the worst thing to me that anyone can do to anyone else. Let them believe they're loved and wanted, and then show them that it's all a sham. Now, what we know about her first husband, Archie, is that, first of all, she lived with his mother and Archie together in a house, and the mother was very much against her. And Archie did fool around. That was pretty much a known fact. And he did fall in love with, I'm not sure if it's somebody he worked with, but he ended up marrying the other woman and living happily until she passed away. And when Agatha Christie was found in a spa, she was listed under or registered under her husband's mistress's name, which is a mystery in all itself. So I'm really excited to read The Mystery of Mrs. Christie. I think that's the name of it. I hope it is. I'm also a writer. I write memoir. And I wrote a book in 2011 called From Agoraphobia to Zen. It was published by a small press in the UK. And it's now out of print, and I'm writing another book. But it's about trauma that I went through, various traumas. And in my last chapter, which is Zen, I quote The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. So I'll do it to end this. And now, monsieur et madame, said Poirot rapidly, understand this. I mean to arrive at the truth. The truth, however ugly in itself, is always curious and beautiful to seekers after it. I really believe that about truth, because until I learned my own truth that had been hidden from me either by myself or other people, I wasn't able to heal. So I really also believe in truth. But coming back to Agatha Christie and Sad Cypress, I really love this book. It's going to be one of my at least top 3 favorites. And a lot of the reason is because of the atmosphere around it. I could almost feel the war happening, the horrible feeling that the people there must have had. And it's in her words. It's here. You only have to look for it. And that's true about any book. We can find out what the author was thinking and feeling when you look beyond the words and into the feeling of the book. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until we meet the next time, and I hope it's soon when I'm out of my arthritis pain, I wish everybody much aloha.